Introduction. Friends, if you're looking to watch a powerful, emotionally gripping movie based on true events, then The Girl Who Escaped 2023 is a must-watch. And if you want to enjoy it in English, you've come to the right place. Just make sure to like this video. Also, if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update on the latest movie releases, reviews, and entertainment news. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into everything you need to know about The Girl Who Escaped, a film that has made waves with its impactful storytelling and unforgettable performances. In this video, we'll explore what this movie is all about and why it's getting so much attention. We'll talk about where and how you can watch it, whether it's available on any OTT platform or if it's airing on any satellite TV channels. I'll walk you through all the important aspects, from the technical crew to the creative forces behind the film. We'll discuss the efforts of the music department, the intensity of the pre-production phase, the challenges during filming, and how the final touches were added in post-production. Not only that, I'll also share details about the budget of the film and how it performed in terms of box office collection. Did it break records or fly under the radar? We'll find out. And yes, I'll also tell you the full story of the film in a simplified way, without giving away too many spoilers, so you'll get a solid idea of what to expect. I'll give you a small but honest review of the story and what makes this movie worth your time. We'll also look closely at the star cast and their performances, who played which role, how their characters contribute to the plot, and how convincing their performances were. Whether it was the lead actress's emotional journey or the supporting cast's powerful presence, we'll cover it all. And finally, we'll talk about some interesting facts and behind-the-scenes moments that you might not know. So, my friends, make sure to watch this video till the very end, because this one is packed with all the information, entertainment, and insights you need. Let's get started and uncover the story behind The Girl Who Escaped 2023. Alright friends, buckle up because we're diving into the powerful and harrowing journey of The Girl Who Escaped 2023. And trust me, this story will grip you right from the opening scene and won't let go until the very end. We're talking about a film that's not just based on real events, but unfolds in a way that pulls you deep into the psychological and emotional storm faced by the central character. This isn't your average popcorn flick. No superhero suits, no CGI monsters, just real human courage, raw emotion, and a story that refuses to be forgotten. The film begins quietly, almost eerily calm. We meet the young girl, Alicia Kazakovich, living what appears to be a normal suburban life. School, family, the internet, a typical early 2000s teen setting. But it's that very sense of routine and innocence that the film uses to unsettle you. The narrative tricks you into feeling safe, just like Alicia felt. And then comes the shift. The moment she clicks on a chat with someone she believes to be a teenage boy, everything begins to unravel. The film doesn't rush this part. It shows the slow, subtle grooming, the manipulation, the false sense of friendship and security being built, brick by brick, until the trap is fully set. And then, just like that, Alicia is gone. From this point, the film shifts into psychological thriller territory. And here's where it plays with perspective in a smart way. We're no longer just watching Alicia, we're feeling what she's going through. The director makes clever use of confined spaces, dim lighting, close-up shots to make the viewer experience the fear, the claustrophobia, the panic. You are trapped in that basement with her. And let me tell you, it's terrifying not because of jump scares or horror tropes, but because it's real. You know this happened. You know there was a real girl who was really going through this. That emotional weight sticks with you. Now let's talk about the turning points. First big one? When Alicia realizes this man, this monster, is not letting her go. That moment when the reality of her situation sinks in. It's like a gut punch, both to her and to the audience. But instead of being portrayed as a helpless victim throughout, the film slowly reveals Alicia's strength. Her resilience. Her small acts of resistance. Even when she's terrified, she observes, she remembers details, she holds on to hope. And that, my friends, becomes the emotional core of the story. Then comes the second narrative thread, her family, the investigators, the search. The film switches between Alicia's nightmare and the frantic efforts to find her. It creates a dual timeline effect, heightening the tension. You see her parents breaking down, you see law enforcement piecing clues together. But at no point does the movie make it feel like a procedural crime drama. It stays emotional, human, and focused on the cost of every passing second. One of the most intense turning points is the moment of Alicia's rescue. No spoilers here, but let's just say when that door opens after all that darkness, fear, and uncertainty, you will feel a wave of relief that feels earned. And the way the movie handles this moment is not over the top or cinematic for the sake of drama. It's quiet, emotional, and rooted in the truth of what this girl has endured. What makes the narrative so strong is how it balances fear with hope, horror with strength, trauma with recovery. The final act doesn't just rush to a happy ending. It shows the aftermath, the scars, the healing, the real impact. It forces the audience to confront not just what happened, but what it means. And through Alicia's eyes, we don't just witness survival, we witness transformation. This film doesn't play with fancy nonlinear tricks, but it does masterfully juggle parallel perspectives and emotional layers. It's not just the story of a girl who was kidnapped. It's the story of a girl who refused to be broken. And the way the filmmakers unravel that story? Absolutely gripping. Let's talk characters, because The Girl Who Escaped doesn't just rely on plot twists or suspense. It builds its emotional impact through deeply human, well-crafted characters that make the story unforgettable. The central figure, Alicia Kazakovich, isn't written as a one-note victim or a helpless damsel. From the very beginning, you feel like you know her. She's curious, friendly, a little shy, and just stepping into the confusing world of teenage identity and internet connections. What makes her so compelling is that she feels real. She's not perfect. She makes a mistake, one that so many young people could easily make, but her character is never judged for it. Instead, the story gives her space to be scared, to cry, to panic, but also to be clever, observant, and incredibly strong. Alicia's arc is one of the most emotionally powerful things about the film. She starts off trusting, naive even, and her world is shattered in a matter of moments. But rather than being defined by her trauma, she evolves through it. You watch her begin to understand her captor's patterns, watch her fight for small victories in a place designed to strip away every sense of control. She doesn't have superhero strength or martial arts skills. What she has is mental resilience. Her strength comes in her will to survive, in her refusal to give up hope. Every moment in that basement, every time she holds back tears or remembers a detail that might help her escape, you see her transformation. By the end, you're not just watching a survivor. You're watching someone reclaiming their power in real time. Then we've got the villain. Let's just say he is chilling. And the scariest part? He doesn't come across like some horror movie caricature. He seems disturbingly normal on the surface. That's what makes him so terrifying. The character is manipulative, calculating, and emotionally abusive in a way that reflects how real-life predators operate. There's a specific kind of psychological tension every time he's on screen because you never know what will set him off. The actor's performance is subtle but sinister, and the writing never lets us forget that this man is not a monster from a fantasy film. He's the kind that hides in plain sight. Now, Alicia's parents. This is where the emotional core of the story really blossoms. Her mother and father aren't just background noise or worried faces on a screen. They go through a gut-wrenching transformation of their own. At first, they're just trying to make sense of their daughter's disappearance, clinging to hope, falling apart, pushing law enforcement, and blaming themselves. You see their guilt, their helplessness, but also their fight. They don't become heroes with a cape and a GPS. They become heroes by refusing to give up. The film makes you feel their pain, and their strength becomes just as inspiring as Alicia's. And let's not forget the investigators. Usually in a movie like this, law enforcement either gets portrayed as cold or superhuman. But here, they're real people. Flawed, stressed, racing against time. One or two of them get particularly fleshed out. You see how the case affects them personally, how determined they are to find Alicia not because it's their job, but because they care. There's a beautiful moment where a detective pieces together a clue that leads to Alicia's location, and you can feel the emotional weight of that moment, not just for the plot but for the character himself. That moment isn't about being the hero. It's about relief, urgency, and the very human cost of what they're fighting against. Every relationship in the film carries weight. Whether it's Alicia's trust in her online friend, her bond with her family, or even the twisted dynamic between her and her captor, these relationships shape the story on every level. They drive the conflict, build the emotional stakes, and fuel every decision made by the characters. And by the time the credits roll, you've seen not just one girl's escape. You've witnessed an entire emotional ecosystem of transformation, love, strength, and survival. This film doesn't build characters just to serve the plot. It builds the plot out of the characters, their fears, their choices, their hearts. And that's what makes it hit so hard. Let's get into the performances, because this is where The Girl Who Escaped, 2023, really puts the spotlight on raw, emotional talent. The cast doesn't just act, they live these roles. They don't perform to impress, they perform to immerse you, to pull you into the story and make sure you feel every bit of it. So, let's start with the star of the show, Katie Douglas, who plays Alicia. Now, if you haven't seen her in anything before, this role will absolutely make you remember her name. From the very first frame, she completely embodies Alicia. Not just the scared teen who falls into danger, but the intelligent, emotionally layered young girl who refuses to let fear define her. Katie doesn't need big speeches or dramatic breakdowns to make an impact. She uses the smallest expressions, tightening her jaw, flinching in silence, holding back tears, to show exactly what Alicia is going through. You watch her face and you feel every emotion she's trying to suppress. She carries the weight of the story with such sincerity that there are moments where you actually forget you're watching an actress. It's that real. Now, let's talk about the man who plays the captor. This performance is haunting, but not in a flashy way. It's the quiet menace, the false charm, the way he switches from calm to threatening in a heartbeat. It's not the kind of villain who twirls a mustache or shouts all the time. Instead, he keeps you on edge with unpredictability. He's manipulative and calculated, and the actor manages to make your skin crawl with just a stare or a simple line spoken too softly. And here's the wild thing. He never feels like a cartoonish villain. He feels like someone who could exist in the real world, and that realism makes the performance even more chilling. It's the kind of role that could have been overdone, but instead it's played with an eerie restraint that makes it unforgettable. The supporting cast deserves just as much applause. Alicia's parents, especially her mother, bring so much emotional weight to the screen. The actress playing her mom is heartbreaking to watch. She doesn't overact. She just feels like a mother in agony. You see her unravel emotionally, desperate to find her daughter, trying to keep hope alive while the days stretch into panic. There's one scene in particular, when she's pleading with the police and her voice starts to crack, not in a staged, dramatic way, but in that real, raw, lump-in-your-throat kind of way. It's a performance that makes you want to reach through the screen and hug her. The father figure also brings a grounded, stoic strength to the story. He's quieter than the mother, but you can see the storm brewing behind his eyes. He's trying to stay calm for everyone, but you know he's breaking on the inside. The dynamic between the two parents is powerful, and it never feels forced. You believe their grief, their guilt, and their desperate hope. And it's their emotional vulnerability that mirrors Alicia's strength. It all ties together so well. Let's not forget the law enforcement characters, especially the lead detective. Normally, you'd expect these roles to be dry or strictly procedural, but here, they're given just enough backstory and personality to make them feel human. The detective in charge isn't just solving a case, he's affected. He carries the urgency, the pressure, and when the big moment comes where he pieces the final clue together, it feels earned. His performance adds a layer of intensity to the story without overshadowing Alicia's arc. Even the minor roles, neighbors, friends, officers, bring authenticity. Nobody feels like filler. Every performance adds to the atmosphere, and that's what makes the movie so immersive.
No one is phoning it in.
Everyone's on the same emotional frequency, working toward the same truth. This story matters. So when you put all these performances together, Katie Douglas's raw, fearless portrayal, the disturbingly convincing captor, the devastated but determined parents, and the deeply human support cast, you get a film that doesn't just tell a story. It makes you feel it. Every single performance is like a thread in a web, pulling you deeper into Alicia's world and making sure you never look away. Now, let's shine a spotlight on the person behind the curtain, the director of The Girl Who Escaped, because this film doesn't just unfold on its own. It's carefully crafted, emotionally charged, and hauntingly real, all thanks to the hand guiding every frame. This isn't the kind of movie that screams at you with big dramatic flourishes or overly stylized visuals. No, the director goes for something much more impactful: restraint, tension, and raw honesty. From the first frame, you can feel the director setting the tone like a slow-burning fuse. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's steady, deliberate, and quietly terrifying. One of the most impressive things about the direction here is how the tone never wavers. It stays grounded. The mood is heavy, intense, and deeply personal. You're not watching a crime movie. You're living through an emotional nightmare. The director doesn't sensationalize the trauma or the danger. Instead, they keep the camera close, intimate, and focused. You're often right there with Alicia, in the room, in the silence, in the darkness. The director uses stillness and silence as storytelling tools. Long takes, minimal movement, a heavy pause before a line. These subtle choices create more tension than any jump scare ever could. Shot composition plays a huge role in this. There's a claustrophobic feel to the basement scenes where Alicia is held captive. The walls seem to close in. The camera stays tight, rarely giving you a full view of the room. It's all about discomfort. It's about feeling trapped without actually saying a word. And then, outside those walls, when the story follows her family or the investigation, the shots become wider but colder, like the world is vast and indifferent, like time is slipping through their fingers. These visual choices say so much without a single line of dialogue. The director also knows exactly when to slow things down and when to tighten the screws. The pacing isn't rushed. You get to sit with moments. You get to feel Alicia's heartbeat, her breathing, her fear. And then, just when you're lulled into that quiet tension, something shifts. A door creaks, a footstep, a change in lighting. The suspense builds not with sudden music cues or sharp edits, but with the director's ability to let time stretch in just the right way. Every second feels longer when you're holding your breath. And here's something that really stands out: the emotional transitions are flawless. When the story moves from Alicia's captivity to her parents' frantic search, or to the detective working behind the scenes, the tone never feels choppy. It's smooth, seamless. The director ties these narratives together with emotion, not just plot. There's always a lingering thread of anxiety, desperation, or hope connecting each scene. That's not easy to pull off, especially in a story with parallel timelines and multiple character arcs. Stylistically, the film doesn't rely on filters or flashy editing. Instead, the lighting does a lot of the emotional heavy lifting. Warm glows during memories or moments of hope. Harsh, cold tones in scenes of fear or confusion. The basement scenes are particularly effective. They're dim, oppressive, almost colorless. That lack of visual comfort adds to the realism of Alicia's situation. The audience isn't given a break, and that's entirely the point. The director doesn't want you to feel comfortable. They want you to feel what Alicia feels. Another clever choice?
Sound.
Or rather, the absence of it. There are long stretches with barely any music. Just breathing. Footsteps. Ambient noise. It's a risky move, but here it works perfectly. The quiet becomes a character of its own, filling the space with dread. And when the score does creep in, it's subtle and haunting, like an echo you barely notice, but can't shake. This film's direction is all about trust, trusting the audience to stay with the story, trusting the actors to carry the emotion, and trusting the quiet moments to speak the loudest. Every decision feels intentional, from the pacing to the blocking of a scene to the way a character is framed in a mirror or shadow. Nothing is random. Everything has weight. So, if you're wondering why this movie gets under your skin, it's because the director made sure you're not just watching Alicia's story. You're living it. Every frame pulls you deeper. Every beat holds you still. This is not just direction, it's emotional architecture. Let's talk about the visual language of the girl who escaped, because wow, the cinematography is doing some serious emotional heavy lifting. This film doesn't rely on big-budget tricks or flashy camera gimmicks. It whispers to you through the lens. The camera isn't just observing. It's feeling. It's reacting. It's putting you right there in the heart of the terror, the silence, and the small moments of bravery that define this story. And the brilliance is in how quietly powerful it all is. First, let's get into camera angles, because they are so deliberately chosen you'll start to feel like the camera has a personality of its own. In the scenes with Alicia trapped in the basement, the camera hovers low, often looking up at her or slightly behind her. It creates this feeling of confinement, like the room is pressing in on her, like there's nowhere safe to look. The space feels smaller than it is, and it's all because of how the shots are framed. And when the captor enters the room, the angles shift ever so slightly to show Alicia's perspective. He suddenly appears bigger, taller, more dominant, often looming in from the edge of the frame. These are subtle decisions that build an enormous sense of fear without the need for a single word. Lighting is a whole other character in this movie. The way shadows creep along the walls, the way light barely filters into the basement, it's all intentional. The cinematographer doesn't light scenes the way you might expect. Instead of making everything easy to see, they often let the darkness win. Not in a frustrating way, but in a way that makes you lean in, that makes you feel the discomfort of not knowing what's in the shadows. The low light isn't just about mood. It's about perspective. It shows us the world exactly how Alicia is experiencing it, limited, disoriented, and heavy with fear. But then there are these quiet moments, tiny pockets of visual poetry, that hit you like a breath of air. A ray of light through a crack in the door. Dust floating in silence. Alicia's hand trembling in a pool of light. These are the moments that stand out, not because they're grand or overdone, but because they're honest. The cinematography knows exactly when to give us a break from the darkness, and those small moments of softness are like emotional lifelines. They remind us there's still hope. Outside the basement, things don't suddenly get bright and cheerful either. The world Alicia left behind is shown in cool tones and overcast skies. Her home, her school, the police station, they all have a kind of emotional weight to them. The framing in these scenes is wider, a little colder, as if to show the distance between people and the helplessness of a situation. It contrasts beautifully with the claustrophobia of Alicia's captivity. And when the two worlds finally start to merge, when the investigation gets closer to finding her, you can almost feel the visual tones shifting. It's subtle, but you start to notice slightly warmer lighting, slightly steadier shots, and it tells your brain something is changing. There are also standout visual moments that just burn into your memory. Like the first time Alicia realizes she's being watched. The camera doesn't cut or shake. It just sits, letting the realization wash over her and you. Or the scene where she plans her escape, pacing in shadows, framed by the outline of the door like it's her last flicker of hope. These images stick with you not because they're loud, but because they're perfectly placed. The way the camera lingers on faces is also worth mentioning. Close-ups aren't thrown in randomly, they're earned. When the camera locks onto Alicia's eyes in a moment of panic, or when her mother stares at a computer screen with tears just waiting to fall, the frame doesn't look away. And because the cinematography refuses to flinch, neither can we. What's so impressive is how all of these elements, angles, lighting, framing, movement, work together to create atmosphere. You feel the tension simmering in every frame. You feel the dread even in silence. The cinematography makes you part of the story, part of the fear, part of the fight. It doesn't just show you what's happening, it makes you feel what's at stake. And that, right there, is the mark of truly powerful visual storytelling. Editing and pacing in The Girl Who Escaped work like a finely tuned heartbeat, sometimes fast and frantic, sometimes slow and heavy, but always in sync with the emotion of the moment. This film knows exactly when to hold its breath and when to let it out, and the editing is the reason why you stay locked in from start to finish. Let's just say the editor didn't just cut scenes together. They sculpted tension, molded emotion, and stitched the whole experience into a rhythm that keeps your nerves strung tight. Right from the beginning, the pacing is deliberate. It doesn't throw you headfirst into chaos. Instead, it creeps up on you. The early scenes are built with breathing room. You're introduced to Alicia, her life, the world she knows, and these moments aren't rushed. They take their time, not because nothing's happening, but because the film wants you to feel what she's about to lose. The editing gives space to these early beats so that when everything starts unraveling, the emotional impact hits even harder. You feel that shift, that drop in the pit of your stomach, because the rhythm was set so carefully. And when the real danger begins, that's when the editing gets sharper. Not flashy, not chaotic, just tighter. You'll notice how scenes in captivity are cut to draw out tension. There are long pauses between movements, little silences that stretch just a second too long, moments that should be over but aren't, and your brain starts racing. You start scanning the edges of the frame, waiting for something to happen, and that's all thanks to editing that knows how to weaponize time. It doesn't just move the plot along, it plays with your heartbeat. Transitions between scenes are another high point. We move between Alicia's ordeal, the investigation, and her parents' desperate search, and it all flows so smoothly that you never feel yanked around. There's this graceful continuity between timelines, even when they're showing very different emotional states. You'll go from the claustrophobic stillness of Alicia's basement to the frantic pacing of her parents without a single moment of confusion or tonal whiplash. The editing blends emotion and perspective like it's mixing paint on a canvas. Even when the story jumps between characters, it never loses momentum. That's because the editor knows how to carry energy from one moment to the next. For example, a scene might end with Alicia looking toward a locked door, and the next shot picks up with her mother on the phone, pacing in a panic. That emotional baton gets passed seamlessly, and it keeps your investment high. You're always in the right emotional gear, never jolted into a new mood too quickly, or left waiting too long for resolution. Now, let's talk about the climax. You know, the part where everything is on the line, when all the story threads start pulling together, that's where the editing really shows off. Cuts get faster, shots get tighter, but not in a way that loses clarity. The rhythm gets faster, sure, but it never becomes messy. You still feel every second, every decision, every glance, because the editor knows what you need to see to stay engaged. It's like watching a puzzle fall into place under pressure. And yet, even with all this control, the film never feels overly polished. It's not trying to be slick. The pacing respects the seriousness of the story. It doesn't try to entertain in the conventional sense. It tries to make you feel. The edits don't just serve the story, they serve the truth of it. The moments of stillness are never boring. The slow scenes never drag. The fast scenes never lose weight. The balance is just that good. Even during moments where other films might be tempted to cut away, this one lingers. It stays in a room just a few seconds longer than you expect. It lets emotion stew. It lets tension breathe. And when it's time to move on, it does so without fuss, clean, smooth, emotionally guided. It's the kind of editing that doesn't draw attention to itself, but you feel it in your bones. You're not watching a series of scenes. You're riding a wave of anxiety, hope, and determination. So yeah, if this film has you on the edge of your seat without even knowing why, look no further than the editing and pacing. That's the hidden hand keeping the tension alive, the emotion raw, and the story razor sharp. It's not about cutting fast, it's about cutting right. Let's step into the world of the girl who escaped with our ears wide open, because if you thought the visuals were intense, just wait until you experience what's going on in the sound department. The soundtrack and score here aren't just background noise, they're your emotional GPS, guiding you through dread, hope, fear, and everything in between. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's what you don't hear that speaks the loudest. Right from the start, the score doesn't scream for attention. It's not there to impress with sweeping melodies or dramatic flourishes. Instead, it seeps in like a creeping shadow, wrapping itself around the scenes in the most subtle, unsettling way possible. It starts off delicate, maybe a soft hum, a low string drone, something you barely notice until you feel your chest tightening and realize your nerves have been hijacked by a few carefully chosen notes. That's the power of the score in this film. It doesn't announce its presence. It lurks. There are recurring motifs, but they're not traditional themes in the way you'd find in a superhero movie. These are emotional cues, musical fingerprints. There's this whispery pattern that shows up whenever Alicia's fear peaks, a slow, trembling build that crawls up your spine. It's not just eerie, it's intimate. You start to associate that sound with her heartbeat, her breath, her rising panic. And once it's in your head, it follows you through the film. The score becomes part of Alicia's experience, and therefore part of your experience. And then there's the use of silence, which deserves its own standing ovation. This film knows when to shut everything off. There are moments, long, stretched-out moments, where the score simply vanishes. No music, no filler, just the hum of a light bulb, a distant footstep, the creak of a door. And it is terrifying. Not because something jumps out at you, but because your brain is left wide open to anticipate the worst. The absence of music becomes the most powerful sound of all. It makes you hyper-aware. It forces you to listen more closely. It sharpens your attention and multiplies the tension. When the music does rise up, it's usually to underline a turning point. A shift in Alicia's mindset. A glimpse of danger. A moment of resistance. The score swells, not into something grand, but into something raw. The instruments, usually strings, ambient tones, soft percussive pulses, never overwhelm. They sneak into your emotions, tug at them, and leave just as quietly. The music works more like a psychological companion than a traditional cinematic tool. What's especially interesting is how the score mirrors Alicia's arc. In the beginning, the sounds are fragile, trembling, barely there. As the story progresses, they evolve. They gain structure. They start to pulse with resolve. It's like the music is growing alongside her, transforming from fear into defiance. You might not consciously notice it happening, but by the time Alicia begins to fight back, the music has changed too. It's sharper, more focused, with rhythmic patterns that feel like footsteps toward freedom. And don't overlook how the soundtrack complements the supporting characters' moments too. Whether it's her parents breaking down in frustration or a detective silently scanning a scene, the score adapts. It never steals focus, but it gently guides you through what each character is feeling without having to spell anything out. That's the magic of a great film score. It gives you emotional clarity when the dialogue stays quiet. It's also worth mentioning that this movie doesn't pack its runtime with constant music. Instead, it picks its moments. That restraint makes the presence of the score matter. It's like a cold hand on your shoulder in a dark room, only showing up when it's going to make the biggest impact. So if you find yourself clenching your fists during a quiet hallway scene, or tearing up when Alicia stares silently into space, chances are the music had a hand in that. Not by being loud, but by being precise. The soundtrack and score in The Girl Who Escaped don't just support the story. They haunt it, whisper through it, and echo in your memory long after the credits roll. Let's dive into the deeper waters of The Girl Who Escaped, because while the surface of this film is all about suspense and survival, underneath it all, it's brimming with themes that cut deep and leave a mark. This movie isn't just telling a story, it's shaking up conversations, poking at uncomfortable truths, and forcing us to look at the world through the eyes of someone who's been silenced. And it doesn't do this by shouting. It whispers, it presses, it lingers, and somehow, that's even more powerful. At its core, this film is about survival. Not just the physical act of staying alive, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual strength it takes to hold onto your sense of self when everything else has been stripped away. Alicia isn't just fighting to escape a physical place. She's fighting to escape fear, powerlessness, invisibility. The theme of endurance runs through every frame. And the beauty is that the film doesn't romanticize survival. It doesn't make Alicia a superhero. It lets her be scared. It lets her fail. It lets her feel helpless. But it also lets her choose to fight, over and over. And that decision, not her ability to escape, is where the film says real strength lies. Another major theme? The failure of systems. This one's loud in the quietest way possible. The people around Alicia, her parents, the police, the school, are trying, but there's a clear message that effort isn't always enough. The institutions designed to protect her are slow, disconnected, sometimes even dismissive. The film never becomes preachy about it, but it doesn't let you look away either. It shows you how cracks in the system become canyons that kids like Alicia fall through. It makes you feel that helpless weight, that unbearable delay between asking for help and actually getting it. That theme sticks with you because it feels terrifyingly real. There's also a strong exploration of identity and agency. Alicia isn't just a victim. The film is deeply interested in who she is beyond the trauma. Her thoughts, her instincts, her need to be believed. It keeps coming back to this idea that being heard, being seen as a full human being, is just as important as being saved. Her journey isn't just about getting out. It's about reclaiming the parts of herself that were taken, buried, or ignored. That theme of reclaiming voice is powerful, and the film treats it with so much respect. You feel every moment she grows bolder, not because someone tells her to be brave, but because she decides to be. Then there's the unspoken theme of silence, and how heavy it is. The silence of victims. The silence of guilt. The silence of not knowing what to say when someone you love is hurting. This film doesn't fill every moment with dialogue because it wants you to sit in the silence and feel the weight of what's not being said. That kind of storytelling is rare, and it drives home the idea that silence isn't empty. It's loud with fear, pain, confusion, and sometimes strength. Alicia's silence is never weakness. It's armor. It's focus. And eventually, it's defiance. One of the most haunting themes is the distortion of trust. Alicia is taken by someone who pretends to be trustworthy, someone who blends in. The film doesn't just show the horror of being trapped, it shows the betrayal that makes it possible. That theme lingers because it forces you to question how we define danger. It's not always the stranger in the dark alley. Sometimes it's the person who knows how to smile just right. That discomfort sticks with you, and the film knows it. There's even a broader social commentary woven through the story. The way young girls are often underestimated, dismissed, or doubted. Alicia's struggle to be taken seriously, both before and after her escape, speaks volumes. It raises questions about how society listens to victims, how quickly we label, how slowly we act. The film doesn't offer easy answers, but it plants the questions so deeply in your brain that you'll be thinking about them long after the screen goes dark. But perhaps the most important message is that hope is not some bright, shining beacon. It's a flicker, a breath, a decision. This film doesn't wrap anything in pretty packaging. It shows hope as messy, stubborn, and sometimes barely there, but still alive. Alicia's strength isn't superhuman. It's human, full of cracks and doubt, and that's what makes it so moving. The film whispers, over and over, that even in the darkest moments, a spark can survive. And sometimes, that's all it takes to find your way back. Alright, let's talk about the visual effects and CGI in The Girl Who Escaped, although calling them effects feels almost misleading. This isn't the kind of film where you'll find giant monsters crashing through skylines or intergalactic space portals tearing through reality. No, this movie plays a different game, one that's way more grounded, but no less impactful. Here, the visual effects work like invisible puppeteers, subtly guiding your emotions, controlling your sense of space, and enhancing realism without ever waving a flag to say, hey, look what we did. The beauty of the visual execution in this film is that you don't always realize it's there. And that's exactly the point. The effects aren't meant to dazzle or distract. They're built to serve the story, to make everything feel so painfully real that you almost forget you're watching a movie. Whether it's the eerily claustrophobic basement where Alicia is held or the dim, soulless lighting of certain scenes, the line between what's real and what's enhanced is practically invisible. And let's be clear, achieving that kind of seamless integration isn't easy. It takes surgical precision and a deep understanding of tone. Practical effects play a big role here, especially in the way the environment is constructed. The locations feel lived in, deteriorated, and disturbingly authentic. There's a physical weight to everything: the chipped paint on the walls, the dust particles floating in a shaft of light, the flicker of an old bulb. These elements could very well be enhanced subtly through digital touch-ups, but they never scream CGI. Instead, they whisper atmosphere. Every detail is curated to amplify that sense of dread, that creeping discomfort that coils around the viewer like a fog. And then there are moments, rare but strategically placed, where digital effects are used to heighten tension. Not in-your-face explosions or flashy illusions, but things like subtle environmental manipulations. A faint fog that thickens ever so slightly. A shadow that lingers a second longer than expected. The kind of enhancements you might not consciously notice, but your instincts do. That's where the CGI really shines. It's not about creating spectacle, it's about amplifying anxiety in ways your brain can't quite put a finger on. The practical effects also help keep the experience grounded in reality. There are no surreal dream sequences or flashy montages. When the film shows bruises, chains, escape attempts, or even the small, heartbreaking details of a room designed to keep someone trapped, you feel every corner and surface. And when those practical elements are enhanced with just the right amount of digital polish, the effect is chilling. Everything looks too real to be staged. It doesn't look like a set, it looks like a place someone could really be held. That's the psychological weight the film leans on, and it's made possible by how delicately the effects are woven into the fabric of the story. Lighting and color grading, while not visual effects in the traditional blockbuster sense, are a huge part of the visual language here. The tones are muted, drained of color, giving the entire film a washed-out, almost suffocating look. And yes, that's by design. This isn't a vibrant world. It's a cold, indifferent one, and the visuals reinforce that emotion. Scenes shift subtly from sterile to menacing just by tweaking the hue or saturation. It's digital craftsmanship used for psychological manipulation, not just aesthetic flair. The restraint in this film's approach to CGI is honestly one of its strongest choices. It never goes overboard. It never tries to do more than it needs. Every visual element, whether practical or enhanced, is there for a reason: to immerse you deeper into Alicia's world, to close the walls in just a little tighter, to blur the line between the audience and the character's trauma. The result? A viewing experience that feels disturbingly authentic, emotionally charged, and visually coherent from beginning to end. So, while it might not have the kind of effects that make you drop your popcorn in awe, The Girl Who Escaped achieves something far more impressive. It uses visual storytelling to wrap you in a world you believe, so deeply that it almost feels like memory. That's the kind of effect that doesn't fade when the credits roll. It lingers. Quietly. Just like the film itself. Now, let's zoom in on one of the most quietly powerful elements of The Girl Who Escaped: the set design and locations. This movie doesn't rely on sprawling cityscapes or jaw-dropping scenery to pull you in. Instead, it drops you into a small, terrifyingly real world that feels so authentic, you might find yourself nervously glancing at your own surroundings. The genius here isn't in showing off. It's in how the spaces feel so intimately tied to the story, so emotionally reactive to what Alicia is going through, that they become characters in their own right. Let's start with the location, Alicia's place of captivity. It's the kind of setting that sticks with you, not because it's elaborate or overly stylized, but because it's horrifyingly mundane. The basement isn't drenched in dramatic shadows or glowing with cinematic lighting. It's ordinary, concrete, cold, claustrophobic. There's a dirty mattress, maybe a single bulb swinging ever so slightly, a rickety door that somehow feels like the most terrifying object in the room. The design choices here are all about emotional discomfort. You can almost smell the mildew. It's so real it feels invasive, like you're not just watching Alicia be held, you're in there with her. That's powerful storytelling through design. And then there's the contrast. When the film shifts to normal settings, school hallways, bedrooms, police stations, they're not painted in warm safety. They're stark, sterile, disconnected. The production design makes these safe places feel distant, impersonal, almost hollow. It's a brilliant way of showing that even outside the cage, Alicia doesn't really feel free. The world isn't wrapping her in comfort. It's full of gaps, silences, cold stares, and unanswered questions. These spaces, whether it's her family home or a bland office with faded chairs, feel emotionally numb. That emotional layering through design is subtle, but powerful. Props are used with the same careful intention. Nothing is flashy or overly symbolic, but everything matters. A notebook, a door lock, a piece of clothing. They're all chosen not just for realism, but for the emotional reaction they provoke. A tattered blanket isn't just a prop, it's a visual metaphor for isolation. A bowl of untouched food isn't just scenery, it's a statement on fear. These small, precise choices build a world where everything has a purpose, and that purpose is to tell us something more about Alicia's state of mind, her environment, and the people around her. The locations themselves also evolve with the story. As Alicia begins to regain control, notice how the spaces start to shift. There's more light, more room to breathe. But it's never a full return to comfort. It's more like the set design lets a little hope in, but only a crack at a time. It's a gradual, emotional transformation told entirely through the physical world, and it's handled with such restraint that you might not even consciously register it. But you feel it. Even exterior shots, few but impactful, are chosen with that same thoughtfulness. The isolation isn't just felt inside a building, it's echoed in wide, empty roads, overcast skies, and muted colors. You never see a crowded space or bustling life. The world feels eerily quiet, even when Alicia is outside. That's intentional. It makes you feel like escape isn't about geography, it's about emotional safety. And if the world doesn't feel safe, then it doesn't matter how far she runs. And here's where the production design really shines. It listens to the story. It reacts to it. It supports it. There are no decorative choices for the sake of style. Every location feels like it belongs to this specific narrative, this character, this emotional experience. That tight alignment between story and setting makes the world feel airtight. You're not just watching something unfold, you're in it. And the more you notice the little details, the chipped paint, the dim lighting, the creaky steps, the more you realize just how much care went into making sure the setting never lets you feel too comfortable. In a film like this, where so much of the tension is psychological and emotional, the world around the characters becomes crucial. The Girl Who Escaped doesn't need grand, sweeping visuals to immerse you. It builds its world one unsettling hallway, one dim corner, one cold surface at a time. And by the end, you'll swear you've been there too, feeling every closed door and narrow escape right alongside Alicia. That's the quiet brilliance of production design when it's done just right. It doesn't have to scream to be unforgettable. It just has to feel real. Let's dive deep into the words, the lifeblood of the girl who escaped. Now, in a film built around survival, manipulation, and silent battles of the mind, dialogue isn't just something characters use to fill space. It's a weapon. It's armor. It's bait. And sometimes, it's a scream wrapped in a whisper. This script isn't overflowing with monologues or fancy soliloquies. It doesn't need to be. The brilliance of the writing lies in its restraint, in how much weight it carries with so few words. Every line has a job, and believe me, nobody is on break. From the very first interactions, you'll notice how the script captures vulnerability without being overly sentimental. Alicia's voice isn't melodramatic. It's raw, careful, and laced with layers of emotion she's barely able to express. When she speaks, it's not about what she says, it's what she's afraid to say, and what's buried between the pauses. The silences in this script are just as loud as the words. And that's what makes it so powerful. There are scenes where someone says something simple, almost mundane, and it hits like a punch because of the context, because of what came before, or what's hanging in the air like a threat. And let's talk about the manipulative, controlling dialogue from the antagonist. Oh, it's chilling. Not in the horror movie, I'm going to get you kind of way, but in the quiet, calculated, gaslighting kind of way that makes your skin crawl. The script understands the psychology of abuse so well that these conversations feel like they were ripped out of real-life nightmares. The way charm twists into threat, the way kind words become cages, it's haunting. The dialogue gives you a window into how control works, how fear is layered into seemingly innocent phrases. You don't need monsters when you have manipulation this sharp. Then there's the supporting cast, the adults who fail, the ones who try to help, and those caught somewhere in between. Their lines often reflect society's blind spots. Some of them speak with bureaucratic detachment, others with well-meaning but clueless encouragement, and a few with genuine empathy. And here's where the script gets interesting. It doesn't waste time preaching or lecturing. It lets these characters expose their own limitations through what they say and, more importantly, what they don't say. You feel Alicia's frustration, her isolation, through the dialogue of others. The script lets their words build the walls around her just as much as her captor ever did. There are moments in the film where a single line can shift the entire tone of a scene. Something small, like a question delivered with just the right amount of unease, or a response that trails off into silence, forces you to sit up straighter. The tension doesn't come from shouting matches. It comes from what's unsaid, from what's implied, from a sudden change in rhythm. The dialogue is crafted like a trap. It's meant to draw you in and then snap shut before you even realize what's happening. And let's not forget the emotional gut punches. There are lines, short and sharp, that cut right through. Lines that might seem simple on paper, but when delivered in the right moment, when you know what Alicia has gone through, what she's survived, they feel monumental. The kind of dialogue that makes your breath hitch because it feels like truth has just been spoken in its rawest, most painful form. These moments aren't flashy, but they burn. They remind you this isn't just a story. It's someone's nightmare, someone's fight, someone's truth. The script also knows when to pull back, when to let the visuals do the talking. But when it does lean into language, it's never wasted. Whether it's in courtroom testimonies, quiet conversations, or explosive emotional outbursts, the writing never dips into cliché. There's no forced drama, no overcooked inspirational speeches. It stays grounded, human, and emotionally honest from start to finish. In the end, the dialogue in The Girl Who Escaped isn't there to entertain. It's there to expose, to dig, to haunt. Every word feels like it was carved from real experience. It's precise. It's personal. And it lingers in your head long after the screen goes black. If you're listening closely, you'll hear not just what the characters are saying, but what the film itself is trying to scream. So here we are with The Girl Who Escaped, a film that sits right in that emotionally heavy, psychologically driven true crime genre, but don't expect it to play by the usual rules. This isn't your typical thrill-a-minute crime drama, with dimly lit detective montages and big courtroom shoutfests. Oh no! This movie knows the genre it belongs to, but instead of leaning hard into the tropes, it does something far more interesting. It slows down, strips back, and focuses intensely on the survivor's perspective. And that shift changes everything. True crime films often make the mistake of turning trauma into spectacle. But here's where this film flips the script. It refuses to let the audience look away, but it also doesn't exploit. It's not about chasing the criminal, cracking the case, or delivering a last-minute twist. The genre frame is still there, sure. There's crime, there's fear, there's tension, but it's all filtered through Alicia's eyes. That choice right there is a genre bender. The suspense doesn't come from whether the bad guy will be caught. It comes from watching Alicia figure out how to survive one terrifying moment at a time. That's a powerful realignment of what this genre can do. Let's talk about drama because this film is swimming in it. But it's not the loud, chaotic kind. This is intimate, emotional drama that hits in waves. Conversations carry the tension. Glances become weapons. A silence in a room can feel like a scream. The film pushes drama into every corner of the genre, reminding you that survival stories don't need explosions or chase scenes to raise your heart rate. Instead, they build pressure from the inside out. It's a slow burn that never loses heat. Suspense? Oh, it's there. But again, it's not built on action. It's built on unpredictability. You're constantly on edge, not because something big might happen, but because you never quite know what's going to happen or when. The danger feels close, constant, and terribly realistic. That kind of suspense, rooted in psychological manipulation and quiet power shifts, is way harder to pull off than a jump scare. But when done right, like here, it makes every scene feel like walking a tightrope in the dark. And in terms of freshness, this film breathes new life into a genre that can sometimes feel formulaic. By refusing to glorify the predator or dramatize the escape with Hollywood gloss, it introduces a rawness that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about true crime storytelling. It challenges the audience to focus not on the crime itself, but on the aftermath, the ripple effects, the recovery or lack of it. That's a bold direction. And it feels like a direct answer to the usual formula that focuses more on what happened and less on how someone lived through it. Now, let's address the elephant in the genre, clichés. They're everywhere in true crime stories: hero detectives, dumb mistakes, dramatic rescues. This film? It dodges almost all of them. There's no savior character riding in on a white horse. There's no over-the-top villain speech. Even the escape itself isn't drawn out like some action set piece. It's messy, terrifying, and deeply personal. The movie isn't interested in giving you what's expected. It's interested in giving you what's real. And in doing that, it exposes how often the genre gets it wrong by oversimplifying trauma or turning it into plot points. Even the resolution doesn't feel like the usual end-of-episode wrap-up. There's no easy justice here. There's ambiguity. There are unanswered questions. Because that's what happens in real life. This genre, when handled right, is about more than crime. It's about impact. And this film executes that idea with precision. So, while The Girl Who Escaped is technically part of the true crime, survival drama genre, it refuses to let itself be boxed in. It borrows the structure, but tells the story in a way that feels raw, human, and deeply uncomfortable in the best way possible. It turns genre expectations upside down not by being flashy, but by being honest. And sometimes, honesty is the most radical thing a genre film can do. Now this is where The Girl Who Escaped shows its true teeth, not just as a gripping survival story, but as a film that isn't afraid to throw a spotlight on the uncomfortable truths society often prefers to ignore. It dives headfirst into some of the most sensitive and urgent social issues: child trafficking, victim blaming, the justice system's failures, and does it all without ever feeling like a public service announcement. The commentary is baked into the bones of the story. It doesn't lecture. It shows. It lets the horror unfold in such a raw, unfiltered way that you find yourself thinking, this isn't just a story, this is a mirror. One of the biggest cultural critiques the film takes aim at is how society treats survivors, especially young women. From the very beginning, you can feel the weight of disbelief that Alicia faces. The system is slow, skeptical, and often indifferent. The film doesn't present law enforcement as cartoon villains, but it does highlight the bureaucracy, the red tape, the missed chances. It makes you squirm not because it's exaggerated, but because it's painfully real. The people who are supposed to help often don't. The institutions meant to protect are riddled with gaps. The film quietly but powerfully exposes just how easy it is for someone like Alicia to slip through the cracks. And then there's the media angle. The film doesn't go all out with a subplot about sensationalist news coverage, but it subtly hints at the way certain stories are treated like headlines, not human experiences. It raises the question, do we care about the people or just the drama? That's a tough pill to swallow, and the movie doesn't sugarcoat it. It challenges the audience to examine their own role as consumers of true crime and tragedy. Why do we watch? What are we really looking for? It puts that tension front and center, even if it never outright says it. The film also holds up a magnifying glass to how predators operate, not just as individuals, but within the culture that allows them to blend in. This guy doesn't lurk in shadows. He's friendly, charismatic, normal. And that's the point. The movie shows how grooming and control don't always look like horror movie violence. They look like manipulation, like slowly cutting someone off from safety, like pretending to care. The social commentary here is razor sharp. It's a warning that monsters don't always wear masks. Sometimes they wear smiles. And let's not forget the role of the community. The film throws us into a world where bystanders aren't evil, they're just passive, unaware, or unwilling to get involved. And that passivity? That's part of the problem. The movie taps into this uncomfortable reality that sometimes the silence of others can be just as damaging as the actions of the abuser. It asks, what would you have done? Would you have noticed? Would you have spoken up? It never preaches, but it leaves those questions hanging in the air, daring you to answer them. Even on a broader cultural level, the movie holds a mirror up to how we view young girls. How quickly they're judged. How rarely they're believed. How they're expected to stay strong, stay quiet, stay polite, even in the face of unimaginable trauma. Alicia's journey becomes a direct commentary on resilience, yes, but also on how that resilience is often demanded of girls when it should never have been needed in the first place. The film doesn't wrap that message up in neat packaging, it lets it simmer. All of this is done with nuance. Nothing feels tacked on. These themes aren't sprinkled in, they are the foundation. They rise naturally from the story because the story itself is shaped by these realities. And that's what makes the social and cultural commentary hit so hard. It's not there to impress, it's there to expose. The film gives you a story you'll never forget, and in the process, it forces you to see the world a little differently, maybe even a little more honestly. And that, friends, is the kind of storytelling that doesn't just entertain, it shakes you awake. If you're looking for a film that gets under your skin and refuses to leave quietly, The Girl Who Escaped is exactly that kind of experience. This isn't just a movie you watch. This is one that grabs your emotions by the collar and doesn't let go. From the opening scene, there's this quiet, creeping sense of dread that wraps around you like a tightening thread. It doesn't hit you with jump scares or action-packed distractions. It sneaks in with looks, silences, and moments so real they feel stolen from life itself. And before you know it, you're not just watching Alicia's story, you're living it with her. There are moments in this film that are going to break you. Not in a dramatic movie trailer way, but in a slow, aching gut punch kind of way. You feel her fear when the world around her doesn't believe her. You feel the rage boil up when you realize how easily someone can be overlooked or dismissed. You hold your breath during those unbearably tense moments, not because the film tells you to, but because your body just reacts that way. It's an emotional tug-of-war, and you are absolutely part of the rope. Now don't expect big, bombastic emotional swings. This film plays with subtle power. A glance between characters can be more intense than a scream. A long pause before a word can hit harder than a monologue. That's the kind of emotional craftsmanship that stays with you. It makes you want to talk about it after the credits roll, not because you need to explain the plot, but because you're still unpacking how it made you feel. And that, right there, is what makes it stick. And yes, there will be viewers who find themselves tearing up, not just at the trauma, but at the small victories. The quiet strength, the moments of defiance, the rare, flickering glimpses of hope. Those scenes don't feel like they're engineered to manipulate tears. They're in every drop. The emotional resonance is built from truth, not technique. That authenticity hits you in places you didn't expect. This movie is also a conversation starter, no question. You can't finish it and just walk away like nothing happened. It lingers. It raises questions you can't answer quickly. What would I have done in Alicia's place? What would I have done if I saw something suspicious? How many stories like hers are still unfolding in silence? It doesn't just invite reflection, it demands it. It forces the audience to not just feel, but think. And you'll find yourself wanting to talk about it, maybe even needing to, just to process it all. And for the people who usually breeze through movies without a second thought, this one might surprise them. It sneaks up on you. You think you're watching a straightforward survival story, but then, bam! It pulls you into a deeply human, soul-shaking experience that makes you question things far beyond the screen. And while it may not be the kind of film you rewatch for fun, it's absolutely the kind you revisit because you have to, because new details surface, new emotions hit differently, and you're drawn back in by the weight of it all. This isn't passive viewing. This is storytelling that reaches out of the screen, grabs your heart, and says, pay attention. The Girl Who Escaped doesn't want you to just sympathize. It wants you to feel, to wrestle, to wake up. And that's what makes audience engagement here not just effective, it's unforgettable. When you stack The Girl Who Escaped next to other films in the true crime, survival, or trauma-centered genre, it doesn't just quietly take a seat at the table. It shifts the chair, moves the centerpiece, and changes the conversation altogether. Most films in this space tend to come at you with a formula, a quick backstory, a string of horrors, a rushed rescue, and a feel-good resolution. But this one? It tosses that blueprint right out the window and says, let's do this differently. And that difference? It's what gives it its edge. Think about films like Room, Abducted in Plain Sight, or even The Lovely Bones. They all have elements of abduction, emotional devastation, and the harrowing journey back to self. But where some of those lean heavily into stylized storytelling or even dramatized tension, The Girl Who Escaped goes the opposite direction. It strips things down to the bare, brutal truth. There's no glossy filter, no sugar-coated trauma. It feels like it's rooted in reality, raw and uncomfortable, and that alone gives it a tone unlike most of its cinematic cousins. It doesn't lean on horror tropes to build fear. It doesn't need creepy basements or ominous music to make you squirm. The real horror here is the ordinary, how easily someone can be taken, how normal a predator can look, and how silence can stretch on when justice stalls. That's a chilling departure from movies that focus more on the heroics of police chases or courtroom drama. This story lets the survivor be the center, not the savior who shows up in the third act. Even within the director's filmography, if you're familiar with their previous work, this movie feels like a pivot. There's more restraint, more grit, and a noticeably deeper emotional dive. You can feel the shift in intention. It's less about creating cinematic drama and more about amplifying a real voice, giving weight to a story that demands to be heard without the gloss and glamour of Hollywood sheen. It's storytelling with responsibility, with conscience. Now, if we're comparing within the wider true story adaptations that often flood streaming platforms, The Girl Who Escaped doesn't play by those made-for-TV rules either. It doesn't rely on cliffhangers every 10 minutes. It doesn't sensationalize. There's no melodrama, no dramatic violin score when something terrible happens. It trusts the story to speak for itself, and it does. Loudly, quietly, all at once. Even when placed next to iconic survival tales like 127 Hours or Escape from Pretoria, the difference is clear. Those films focus on physical escape. But The Girl Who Escaped goes one step further. It's not just about breaking free from a room. It's about reclaiming a voice, identity, and trust in a world that keeps trying to steal it. The journey is emotional, psychological, and spiritual. And that adds layers most genre films don't even attempt to reach. There's also a notable shift in gender perspective. Many films in this genre are told from the outside looking in, through the lens of a detective, a parent, or a journalist. This one centers the girl. It honors her gaze, her experience, her truth. That's a game changer in a genre that too often prioritizes the mystery over the person. In a sea of crime-based narratives, The Girl Who Escaped swims against the current. It doesn't ask for sympathy. It demands empathy. It doesn't go for spectacle. It chooses substance. And where so many films fade into the noise of familiar beats and recycled drama, this one carves out a space that feels bold, haunting, and fiercely human. It might share a genre with many, but it plays by its own rules, and the result is something you don't just watch. You remember. You carry it with you. Now, The Girl Who Escaped isn't part of a cinematic universe or a multi-film franchise with sequels and spin-offs, but don't let that fool you. Its roots go deep into real-life events, and in that sense, it holds the emotional weight of an entire history. This is not a made-up thriller designed to entertain on a Saturday night. It's a film that walks the tightrope between storytelling and truth-telling, grounded in the harrowing, real-life experience of Alicia Kazakovich. And that reality gives the film something no franchise ever could, a connection to our world that hits hard and lingers. When it comes to historical accuracy, The Girl Who Escaped doesn't take creative liberties for the sake of drama. It doesn't need to. The truth is already gripping, already terrifying. The film carefully respects the events it's portraying, from the moment of abduction to the psychological manipulation, all the way through the rescue and recovery. It doesn't glamorize or exaggerate. It immerses. It understands that accuracy isn't just about dates or clothing or headlines. It's about emotional truth, about capturing the terror, confusion, and strength of someone who lived through what most of us can't even imagine. Where many dramatizations will insert overly heroic moments or action-heavy sequences, this film leans into restraint. It knows that the quiet moments, a door creaking, a sudden silence, the look in Alicia's eyes, speak volumes more than a chase scene ever could. It's immersive not because it overwhelms you with spectacle, but because it surrounds you with realism. You're not watching from a distance. You feel like you're in the room, on the street, hearing the news, feeling the aftermath. Another fascinating layer is how this film taps into the broader historical context of early internet safety. Alicia's story unfolded in a time when online awareness was still in its infancy. There were no widespread public conversations about online grooming or chatroom predators. That makes this story not just personal, but cultural. The film becomes a snapshot of a society caught off guard by technology's darker possibilities, of a generation stepping into a digital world without a map. Watching it now feels almost prophetic. It shows us just how far we've come in understanding these dangers, and how far we still need to go. And while it isn't technically part of a series, it does belong to a kind of unofficial lineage of films based on real survivors, stories that force us to look at the cracks in our systems and our communities. It joins the ranks of stories like Cleveland Abduction, Girl in the Bunker, or I Am Elizabeth Smart. But what sets it apart is how it refuses to turn Alicia into a symbol of tragedy. She is the center, yes, but not as a passive figure. She's active, layered, and fully realized. The historical context of her survival becomes a call to awareness rather than a cautionary tale frozen in the past. So while there may be no sequel to The Girl Who Escaped, no expanded universe to explore, it still manages to be part of something bigger, a real-world narrative about safety, resilience, and the long shadow of trauma. Its historical weight isn't measured in set pieces or timestamps, but in the very real, very present echo of Alicia's story in today's world. Watching this film isn't just revisiting the past. It's acknowledging the present and asking what we've learned. And maybe, just maybe, who we need to protect next. When it comes to The Girl Who Escaped, we're not talking about a blockbuster with a jaw-dropping marketing campaign or a budget big enough to fund a small country. This isn't the kind of film that launched 1,000 fast food toy tie-ins or flooded every commercial break during the Super Bowl. No, this is a much quieter production, more modest in budget, but that's where it gets really interesting. Because despite not having the financial firepower of a Marvel epic or a mega franchise, the film manages to punch way above its weight class in terms of production quality, emotional depth, and audience impact. Let's talk about the budget first. While the exact numbers weren't splashed across headlines, everything about the film's presentation suggests it was created with careful spending and a strong focus on efficiency. There are no massive set pieces or heavy CGI sequences demanding millions per frame. Instead, the film leans heavily on atmosphere, tight spaces, minimalistic settings, and raw performances. It's a smart move. Why spend millions on flashy effects when you can grip an audience with a single look, a well-lit hallway, or the slow creak of a closing door? Production quality is where this film truly surprises. From the lighting to the framing, everything feels intentional. The cinematography might not scream Oscar contender, but it whispers emotional authenticity with every frame. The sound design? Subtle but powerful. The score? Intimate and impactful. And the set design? Claustrophobic when it needs to be, hopeful when it matters most, is evidence that you don't need a fortune to craft a believable, emotionally charged world. The filmmakers clearly knew how to stretch every dollar, and it shows in all the best ways. Now, about the box office. This film didn't drop into thousands of theaters nationwide or rake in hundreds of millions globally. That's not the kind of project this was. The Girl Who Escaped is more of a television event or streaming release, made for audiences looking for something meaningful rather than explosive. It's built for impact, not numbers. So while it may not have topped any box office charts, that doesn't mean it didn't find success. Success, in this case, came through viewership, word of mouth, social media buzz, and emotional resonance with audiences who needed to hear the story. Marketing for a film like this also takes a different approach. It's not about flashy trailers and viral stunts, it's about conversations. This movie didn't need to shout to be heard. It relied on awareness campaigns, survivor communities, advocacy groups, and true crime followers who were already engaged in the issues it explores. When people watched The Girl Who Escaped, they didn't just watch. They talked about it, they recommended it, they remembered it. That kind of organic momentum doesn't come from spending millions on ads. It comes from telling a story that genuinely moves people. And let's not forget the emotional investment. While superhero films often judge their success by opening weekend totals, a movie like this measures its impact in something far more powerful: how many viewers it left thinking, feeling, and talking long after the credits rolled. Did it spark dialogue? Did it raise awareness? Did it make people reflect on real-world issues and maybe take action? Those are wins no box office number can fully capture. So yes, The Girl Who Escaped might not be a financial juggernaut by industry standards, but in the arena of storytelling, emotional resonance, and social relevance, it absolutely holds its own. This is a film that proves you don't need a sky-high budget to deliver sky-high stakes, and that real success is sometimes measured in hearts reached, not just tickets sold. Alright, let's dive even deeper into where and how you can watch The Girl Who Escaped, because trust me, this isn't the kind of film you want to miss or half-watch while multitasking. This is a story that pulls you in, grips your attention, and demands that you stay with it from the first frame to the very last chilling moment. And the best part? You don't even have to leave your house to experience it. So first things first, The Girl Who Escaped didn't go the theatrical release route. There were no midnight premieres, no box office weekend battles, and no blockbuster competition. Instead, this film went exactly where it belongs, into homes, directly to viewers who value emotional storytelling and real-life impact. It was created as a made-for-television movie, premiering on Lifetime. That's right, Lifetime. The network known for its gripping, emotional, and often true story-based narratives. They know their audience, and they knew exactly how to bring this story to life in a way that would hit hard and stay with you. Now, just because it aired on television doesn't mean you need to wait around hoping for a rerun. We live in the age of streaming, thankfully. If you missed the premiere or want to revisit the film, you've got options.
Plenty of them.
For starters, Lifetime's own streaming services often provide access to their original films, either as part of a subscription or for rent. Then there are broader streaming platforms that partner with Lifetime's content library. Think of those platforms that give you access to a treasure trove of movies based on real events, true crime stories, and compelling human dramas. If you're already subscribed to one of those, you might just find The Girl Who Escaped ready and waiting for you in the recommended list. And let's not forget digital rentals. Services like Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, or Google Play often list films like this under their drama or true crime sections. You might have to rent or purchase it, but for a story like this, it's a small price to pay for an evening of powerful storytelling. Just type in the title, hit play, and you're transported into a world that's unsettling, emotional, and very real. Now, let's talk about how to watch it. This is crucial. This isn't background noise. This isn't something you play while checking emails or scrolling through your favorite social media feed. This is an experience. The film unfolds slowly, with tension building like a slow drumbeat in the distance. Every expression matters. Every silence, every glance, every line of dialogue is carefully placed. So, do yourself a favor, treat this like an event. Dim the lights. Grab a blanket. Maybe make a cup of tea or something comforting, because what you're about to watch is heavy, intense, and deeply emotional. It's also one of those stories that stays with you long after you've watched it. The impact doesn't end with the credits. You'll find yourself thinking about it the next day. You might even want to talk about it, reflect on it, or recommend it to someone who appreciates meaningful cinema. It's that kind of film. So, to sum it all up, you can catch The Girl Who Escaped through Lifetime's network on streaming platforms that feature Lifetime content, or via digital rental services like Prime Video and Apple TV. But wherever you find it, make sure you give it your full attention. Let yourself be immersed. Let yourself be moved. Because this film isn't just a story, it's an emotional journey, and you'll want to feel every moment of it.